Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to be looking at a truly fascinating way to understand human health. I want you to imagine your body, well, not as some mechanical machine with a bunch of isolated, disconnected parts. Instead, think of it as this vast, dynamic, actively flowing river system, right? Everything that keeps you alive and vital is just in constant motion. And today, we're going to look at exactly what happens when that beautiful flow gets interrupted. So, where does that lump in your throat actually come from? Have you ever experienced that incredibly frustrating physical feeling? You know the exact sensation I'm talking about. That weird phantom globus feeling where you're constantly trying to swallow, but nothing goes down. Or, maybe it's an actual medical diagnosis like sudden nodules or myomas. It literally feels like something solid has just inexplicably appeared and gotten physically stuck right inside you. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's happening beneath the surface. On one hand, we've got our blood vessels and energetic pathways, which act literally just like a flowing river. And on the other hand, we have those frustrating nodules, myomas, and physical lumps. And those perfectly represent silt and mud. Think about nature for a second here. When a river is rushing with momentum, right, the water's clear. But the second that river slows down, it loses the energy it needs to carry debris. And what happens? Well, silt and mud naturally drop straight to the bottom and just accumulate. The exact same physical laws apply right inside your own body. Now, traditional Chinese medicine actually has a highly precise ancient term for this exact phenomenon. It's called Zheng Jia Ji Ju. What this concept captures so incredibly well is the physical accumulation of silt and blockages within your body's flowing systems. It basically tells us that these lumps and bumps, they aren't just random attacks from the outside world. No, they're the natural, kind of unavoidable buildup of internal mud that happens the moment your body's rivers lose their vital momentum. Let's move to poo and see how this builds across your entire system. We've got three distinct and honestly pretty surprising reasons why our internal rivers lose their momentum and start to stall. We're looking at three vital elements here: qi, blood, and water. Each type of slowdown has a totally unique metaphor attached to it, like a narrow channel, a thick consistency, or just fundamentally poor fluidity. And each one produces a very specific, easily recognizable set of physical symptoms.
So let's look at type 1 qi stagnation.
Think of qi stagnation as a narrowed river channel. Imagine a wide, super fast-moving, rushing river that's suddenly forced into this tight, constricted gorge. Now, the volume of water hasn't changed at all, but the space it's in definitely has. The water furiously struggles to pass through. The pressure spikes, the flow becomes highly turbulent, wildly unpredictable, and it easily overflows its banks or causes sudden, massive blockages downstream.
So how does this turbulent, narrow, high-pressure river actually physically manifest in your everyday life? Well, you easily feel tense. Your muscles are constantly tight. You might become inexplicably anxious, almost like you're waiting for the water to breach the banks. Your mind just races, which leads to frustratingly broken sleep and waking up constantly in the middle of the night. Your body is quite literally experiencing the internal, chaotic pressure of a river bottlenecked in a narrow canyon.
Moving on to type 2. Blood stasis. Now, what's really interesting about this is the incredibly evocative imagery used to describe this state. Blood stasis is exactly like an overcooked, super thick hot pot broth that's just been boiling away on the stove for hours, reducing down into this heavy, dark sludge. Or actually, imagine a pot of cooling sugar water suddenly seizing up and crystallizing into these hard, rigid solids. The liquid just fundamentally loses its ability to flow smoothly. And when your internal fluid quality becomes this thick, sticky, and unmoving, it basically has to forcefully push its way through your vessels. And this translates directly into some really painful physical symptoms. We're talking about chronic, deep body aches and pains that just absolutely will not go away. For women, this can mean heavy menstrual clots. The debris in the river isn't just settling here. The liquid itself is practically turning into a solid object.
And finally, we have type 3, water retention.
In this state, the fundamental nature of your internal water actually changes. The flow is no longer a liquid stream. It moves more like molten lava, or maybe a creeping, frozen glacier. The fluidity is extremely poor. It moves with this heavy, terrible thickness. And when your internal rivers turn into a slow-moving glacier like that, the silt and mud, they don't just have a chance to settle. They are absolutely guaranteed to sink to the bottom and just cement themselves permanently in place.
Now, you might logically think that water retention means you're constantly thirsty and maybe drinking too much, but the real-world symptoms are totally counterintuitive. People with this glacial internal flow often drink very little water because they rarely actually feel thirsty. Yet, because the stagnant water is trapped, they suffer from edema, sudden bodily swelling in the limbs or the face. They can even get skin conditions like eczema breakouts, which is really just the body desperately trying to vent this stagnant, impure water right out through the skin.
This really brings us to a major shift in how we need to view our physical health. We have to stop obsessing over the point. And by that, I mean focusing only on the isolated symptom, staring at the lump in the throat or surgically targeting a single nodule. Instead, we absolutely must zoom out and look at the area, this vast, beautifully interconnected river system woven together by chi, blood, and water. Because think about it, you can't effectively dredge the mud if you don't realize the entire river has stopped moving in the first place.
So the crucial point is captured perfectly in this powerful quote right from our source material. Treating a disease cannot just focus on the point. You must see the area woven by chi, blood, and water. This is truly the ultimate foundation of holistic healing. It reminds us that our bodies are whole environments. Trying to remove a lump of silt while totally ignoring the stagnant water that created it, well, that just guarantees the silt is going to pile right back up again tomorrow.
But there's a really beautiful, hopeful simplicity to all of this. It all comes back to a basic rule of nature. When the river finally flows again, the silt can finally dissolve. By restoring momentum to your whole system, by widening the tight channels of your chi, thinning out that thick broth of your blood, and melting the frozen glaciers of your water, the rushing current itself becomes the ultimate cure. It gently and naturally washes away all that stagnation. Which leaves us with one deeply personal, provocative thought to end on today. Knowing that your overall vitality absolutely depends on this constant, beautiful internal motion, how will you get your own river flowing again today?